So your van is coming together nicely, but you look at your fairly plain, boring plywood ceiling, ready to throw some spotlights up and think, maybe there's something more interesting I could do.
Ha! Well, fear not, because in this video, we're going to be showing you how to make an awesome looking shadow gap ceiling with some LED strips running down the length of the van.
If you're starting from scratch and you want to see how we got to our stage, then head back over to episode 2, where we show you how we insulated and ply lined our ceiling.
Before we start working on the cladding, we've got to fill the last remaining spaces on the ceiling, which runs down the right hand side of the van. To do this, we cut an extra couple of filler pieces using the same 4mm plywood and then check the fit. Then we took the whole ceiling down and worked on getting these attached.
To do this, we need to attach 4 smaller scrap pieces, just so we've got something to attach our bigger filler piece to. Once that had all dried, we glued our 2 pieces in.
Next, we had to think about how we wanted to attach our slats to the ceiling. And it was at this very point that we realised that past us had made one decision which would make this whole process way harder than it needs to be.
So if you go back in time to episode 1, it was just about here that you can see silly old us attaching these battens to the ceiling running down the length of the van. Now if we'd run these battens horizontally across the van, it would mean that we could screw each of the slats in the exact same place, making them perfectly even and super strong.
Fortunately enough, you've now seen this mistake that we've heroically made on your behalf so that you don't have to. So just remember, when it comes to attaching the battens to the ceiling, make things nice and easy for yourself and go horizontal.
So we marked the locations of our ceiling battens onto our plywood so we knew where all of our safe drilling locations were. All of these slats that don't hit these points are going to have to only be screwed to the plywood, so we'll chuck up some adhesive on there as well just to keep it nice and strong. But don't worry, all of yours of course will be screwed to your lovely horizontal battens.
Then we went on to prep our strips, and for this we're using pre-planed 80x8mm pine slats. We went with 8mm as this was the same depth as the lighting we were planning on using, so the LEDs would sit nice and flush with the surface. The lighting we went with were 12V flexi strip LEDs with a seamless warm white light. These would be housed in this U channel, which has a diffuser to provide some really lovely warm ambient lighting.
Before we attach these slats to the ceiling, we need to do a little bit of prep to get them ready. First, we sanded each slat with 220 grit sandpaper using our Geos sander, which makes super light work of it. Since we're doing quite a fine sanding, we flip the switch over to free run mode as this is more suited to a finished surface.
While I was working through these, Matt used our trim router just to put a small chamfer on each edge of the pine just to soften them slightly. And the beauty of having 2 of us is that we can set up a little production line so that we can batch through all of it nice and quickly.
Next, we wanted to apply a finish to these boards to darken them a little bit as well as give them some protection. We played around with a couple of different ideas and we tested both stains and lacquers, but we wanted to keep it easy, so we decided to go for a wax which would both colour and protect the wood at the same time. We bought this in 2 colours, a dark oak and a medium brown, and we tested this on a spare scrap of the pine slat to test which colour we liked the best. Our favourite was a single coat of the dark oak stain, so we applied a liberal coat to all of the slats, left it for a few minutes and then buffed it off.
So going back to our plywood, we measured out 5 equal points along each batten where we could screw into, and then used our pine and lighting strips to mark out where everything would go. This meant that we could see where all of those shadow gaps were meant to be, so we could paint them black. Of course you could just paint the whole plywood sheet black, but this way saves a bit on paint and also means that we can still see all of our markings on the sheet itself.
Once we got the ceiling reinstalled with a couple of screws to hold it in place, we could start getting everything assembled. To get each slat attached, we held it at one end and then marked the opposite end where it needed to be trimmed, and then cut that on the miter saw.
To save time measuring out all of the screwing locations on every single slat, we made a jig using a spare slat that we'd already screwed the correct locations into. We could then just place this on top and screw through the holes to the slat that we were attaching. We also added a couple of lines of flex to the back and got it screwed in place with some brass screw caps.
Then it was just a case of rinse and repeat, using the U-channel as a spacer so that each slat came out the same distance apart. There were a couple of pieces towards the sides of the van that needed to be scribed into place to fit perfectly. So we simply marked this line on, cut it with our jigsaw and screwed it into place as normal.
Now that it was all finished and looking absolutely beautiful, we needed to cut away the excess material that was covering over that air vent. For this we used our multi-tool, which is perfect for this kind of job. We decided to do it this way round as it meant that the slats would be completely aligned and look as if they'd run straight through the air vent.
Next we had to add our LEDs, and we were going for 4 strips along the length of the van. We swapped out our silver U-channel for some black ones as we figured this would match the shadow gaps a little bit better.
To attach these we just had to drill some pilot holes in the aluminium and then screw these in place between the slats. Each section of the U-channel is just 1 metre long, so for those that needed trimming down, we took over to our miter saw. Aluminium can be cut with standard woodworking tools without a problem. Just go slow and be sure to turn off any dust extraction, because you don't want any hot metal shavings mixing with the sawdust.
We then peeled the back off the self-adhesive LED strips, stuck these in place along the U-channel and pushed the diffuser cover into place. Once all 4 strips were in place, we were ready to give it a test run, and here is how it looks.
Those seamless LEDs give off the perfect amount of warm light for the van. Plus, the outer 2 lights are on separate switches to the inner 2, so we can have full or partial lighting. We're also thinking of adding a dimmer switch to those outer lights so that we can have even subtler lighting. Lovely.
Thank you so much for watching the video. It's really exciting to have a fully finished part of the van actually complete.
Now we're very sad to say that the next episode is actually the very last one in this series.
In it, we'll be taking you through all of the finishing touches on the van build and showing you how we get it adventure ready and looking amazing.
So be sure to subscribe to the Triton YouTube channel so that you don't miss it. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.